Hiring people at the leadership level is a very challenging activity and is one of the most sought after tools or sought after aspects that organizations are looking at. Not surprising, there's a huge industry which exists for leadership hiring, leadership management, leadership identification, succession. What we wanted to talk about is the selection part. If you're interviewing and finding a candidate, how do you eventually end up interviewing whether this is the right candidate to be hired into the organization at the leadership level or not? So when you're hiring somebody at the leadership level, the first thing you should be very clear is what do you expect from a person, both in terms of a JD, which is a job description, and also what you want from a person in terms of what is not written in the job description. Not written in the job description could be things like, we are a very political organization. I would want somebody to come who can manage and navigate through this political landscape, or somebody who can change this political landscape, or somebody who can actually create a new culture, or somebody who can be aggressive, somebody who can be assertive. So you have a lot of these expectations that you believe, and a lot of people involved in the leadership hiring decision believe that these are the traits the person should bring on when they come for this position. Now, these are not written in a job description. A job description would be more in terms of what is expected to perform the role. The non-job description aspects are those which are required for a person to be successful in your organization's culture. Once you have both these things written down and clarity in terms of what you want out of these, that is when you start trying to identify, trying to tell that this is the kind of person I want. Now, what is the best way for you to try and gauge an individual? Yes, one of the gauge methods is to interact with the person. But one of the biggest biases that enters in a leadership hiring process, the selection process, is the bias of brands. What does the bias of brand mean, and how do we recommend that you ignore or negate this bias? You should interact with the person if you are at the decision making level. So the people below you, or maybe the selection, the team which is involved in screening, can look at the brands that the people have studied in or the brands they have worked for. But when it comes for you for interaction or the resume for sharing, they should have removed the brands where the person worked, where the person studies. The person should be presenting the credentials of the candidate to you by way of the activities they have performed, the role they have done, and how they have performed those activities. So this helps you stay away from the brand a little bit. Is it useful? Not useful? Our experience shows that once you're not having a brand bias, you're able to talk much more in terms of how the individual will be value added for your organization, rather than assuming that because of a certain brand, you will obviously have some kind of a knowledge or exposure or expertise. So the other thing that we expect you to do is to understand the impact. How does one understand what kind of an impact a person is having at the leadership level? Whatever activities a leader does, you execute those activities, which takes about a year and a half. And as you start executing and implementing those activities or programs, they start bearing some kind of a result. And in a standard environment or a standard organization, the results start showing in about 3 years. It takes anywhere from 3 to 5 years, which is why you will normally find the tenure of a lot of leadership positions where it is fixed by law or where it is researched by scientists in terms of human resource scientists and specialists, that a 3 to 5 year tenure is a reasonable expected tenure for a person in leadership. So a person who has not showing a consistent record of being at leadership roles in the past for 3 to 5 years, whether mid-management leadership or senior leadership, is a red flag. It's not something which is right or wrong, but it's a red flag. It warrants a deeper discussion in terms of how the individual really implemented and what kind of an impact came out. Some kind of an history in terms of impact analysis is going to be a very useful tool for you to understand whether this individual at the leadership level will be able to add value to your organization or not. The third thing which we really feel is going to make a lot of benefit, and which is one of the aspects that we have been really requested by organizations to provide inputs, is an independent reviewer. What does an independent reviewer mean? An independent reviewer means that while you are doing a selection process for a leadership candidate, you should have an independent interview expert. Or when I say interview expert, I mean an interview HR practitioner who does an interaction with the selected candidate or shortlisted candidates and provides his or her views to you. Your entire human resource team, people who are involved in the organization, irrespective whether they are at the board or whether they are individual HR practitioner or individual business leaders, as well as the hiring agency which will be involved, they all have a reason to believe that this individual is going to be useful or not useful for you based on certain understanding of the organization, which means they would always look at an individual from an eye of the organization. There's nothing wrong in that, but what you are doing in that bargain is you are missing out an independent input which could present to you a view which will make sure a candidate who you believe to be of not high value to suddenly become very valued, or somebody you feel of being a very high valued to suddenly being looked at a non-valued candidate. So it is fairly a recommendation or a high recommendation that you should have an independent reviewer who can interact with the candidate and provide that feedback to you. Based on that, you can eventually end up taking a decision. But what these three aspects, removing the brand bias, trying to look at the impact, and getting an independent reviewer, will make sure that your hiring errors at the leadership level are at least less than 10%. Our experience has shown that these three exposures or these three experiences at the leadership hiring process have gone a very long way in terms of ensuring hiring errors at the leadership error to be very, very few, and in any case not crossing more than 10% of your error ratio.